Newburgh is a community torn apart. A community that has a lot of problems and seems few people are interested in trying to help solve it.
I see right now a city that is slowly decaying, businesses leaving, going out to the townships, the different areas.
The place has an absolutely fabulous location with an incredibly beautiful view, all kinds of transportation. It's got everything going for it, except that the people in it, the majority of them, don't seem to believe in it. They don't seem to see it.
There are still tension in this city.
Newburgh has to set its own house in order.
Lots of things are good about Newburgh. We just enjoy living here. The best thing about Newburgh is its people. It has all kinds of people. It has rich people, poor people, black, white, Spanish, Polish, Greek, Italian, German, you name it, they're all here. And that's why we think it's so very special.
This is Newburgh as some of its own citizens see it. Obviously, there is considerable divergence in some of these views. The question might arise, why select this comparatively small city of about 23,000 people for examination? I think what follows should make this clear. For whether you see Newburgh one way or the other, there is no question, everyone agrees, but that this is a city in trouble. Give your imagination full play and visualize this old railroad station as it would have been 50 years ago. Not just the station, but the whole area. Cars pulling up to meet people coming up the West Shore Railroad line from New York and from other cities in the area. People getting out and going off to other parts of the city. But here they were in the heart, the core of the city, because this was old Newburgh. And around this spot was a very, very busy and prosperous area. There were old shops here. There were factories in the area and hotels. Buildings going back to the 18th century. And down by the waterfront, still more factories and a very, very busy river traffic. And then what happened? Then they decided to renew it. So they tore down everything that was old, and in its place they put up nothing. This is the kind of thing they've been doing in Newburgh for decades. They've been taking things down, but they haven't been putting things up. There's no use looking around for new office buildings, new factories, new homes. There aren't any. Downtown is a near desert most days. It takes a school holiday to get any life onto the streets at all. Many of the stores are gone. The merchants and their customers have fled. It is not a new story. Newburgh, like other towns, saw an exodus of its middle-class citizens to the suburbs back in the 50s and early 60s. It was started by desire for more space and spurred by fear. The people left, and in place of the store downtown, there rose that new American phenomenon, the shopping center, anchored to nothing, sprawling across huge quantities of what was once open land, and sucking in the customers from far and near as the age of the automobile reached its pinnacle. As the affluent moved out, the poor moved in. Black people who once worked the nearby fields became city dwellers. Others who once worked in now vanished brick factories settled here, leftovers of a changing and restless economy. Economic flotsam, anxious to work, to improve their lot, but with no skills to make this possible, and no jobs in sight if the skills were theirs. The percentages ebbed and flowed. The more whites left, the more minorities came in. Until today, the figure for blacks and Puerto Ricans is calculated at least 40%. Some say 50, perhaps even more. With no new money coming in, and what it had leaving, Newburgh has stumbled from crisis to crisis. Plans are made but not implemented. Recession arrived here when the rest of the country still deemed itself prosperous. Then the rest of the country tumbled over the brink, and Newburgh went from bad to worse. A trip to the unemployment office makes the economic picture dismally clear.
What are the prospects?
I don't know. It really doesn't look too good. Because I've been working for my father, and he runs a pocketbook factory here in Newburgh. and all the factories in Newburgh have either slowed down or completely closed down.
Your father's too?
Yeah, right. Closed down completely.
Have you seen things like this before?
I haven't.
You come from these parts?
Yes, I worked on one job 30 years.
What happened to it?
Oh, got laid off.
How long have you been without work?
Oh, good 6 months right now. But I picked up 2 days in Kingston, New York.
So what are you doing?
I'm working around the house and the garden and straightening my garage out and looking for work. Somewhere to make $1 somewhere, but there isn't. Everyone else is looking for the same thing.
Other cities throughout the country, unfortunately, share Newburgh's unemployment problems, its lack of modern industry, its failure to plan with any adequacy for a future which proved too full of hazards for the leadership this city was able to command. But Newburgh's growing racial disproportion, in addition to producing more inhabitants well qualified by virtue of their poverty to inhabit its burgeoning slums, also brought racial fears. And last November, first at the high school, then in the center city, there was the most recent of a chain of conflicts between black citizens and authority. Most people, most whites anyway, do not acknowledge racial inequities. For example, the police force has one black and one Hispanic officer. The charge has been made and is now before the courts that there is discrimination in the testing procedures. The charge is also made that there is racism. We asked the current president of the Policemen's Benevolent Association, a young ex-New Yorker from the Bronx named Philip Ginquitti, about that.
No, I speak for myself. I am not prejudiced. On duty, I don't think there's any cop that is prejudiced. Well, off duty, I mean, a person is entitled to his own rights and opinions.
A little over a year ago, Police Commissioner James Taylor took over a force riddled by corruption. Considered a progressive, he is, ironically, under attack because his force has only one black and one Hispanic. We asked him to account for it.
The recruitment of minorities into law enforcement has been a problem across this country. Newburgh is no different in that area. I think that in the past year we have actively tried to recruit and attract minority group members to our department, but we have not been too successful. In fact, as you well know, at the present time we are in federal court on a temporary restraining order and an injunction pertaining to exactly that matter.
Do you feel the minority community is hostile to your force and to the idea of going on to it?
I think that is probably the basic reason that we are unable to attract qualified minority applicants to the department, yes.
In Newburgh, it is impossible to separate feelings about law and order from feelings or fears involving race.
We try and get along with them. The radical militants in all three, the whites, the blacks, the Puerto Ricans, are the ones causing our problems. They are causing the problems, and you will find that across the country. You'll probably find that it's communist-oriented. Somewhere along the line with funds, weapons, literature, and that's what's causing your problem.
Do whites have a legitimate reason to be afraid of the blacks in this community?
No, they do not, because most of the crimes, as we've indicated, are committed by blacks, but they're committed black on black rather than blacks on white. So, in my opinion, they do not have the reason for the alarm and fear that they have demonstrated in the past.
As a police officer, do you see white against black racism and black against white racism in this community?
Quite candidly, I'd have to say I have seen instances of this, yes.
Both kinds?
Yes, no question.
Some reason or other.
81-year-old Sol Nemeroff told us of a different, a happier Newburgh in the days when he came here 40 years ago, and then described the mood of the city today.
I myself come originally from Russia, where I have lived through pogroms. You know what a pogrom is?
Yes, indeed.
In 1903 and 1905, I want you to know that I walked the streets in fear of my own shadow. I want you to know that I walk the streets and always recognizing that I'm a second-class citizen. Now, how can I not address myself to the problem of my brothers, friends, when I recognize that this is a problem that behooves all of us to address ourselves in order to avoid future problems for future generations?
Is Newburgh a happy place to live in now?
No.
Not for anybody?
I'll say for nobody.
The schools. Education and matters concerning it, like busing, are considered important by any community, naturally, since we all prize our children. In smaller cities, the significance increases. In Newburgh, where the core city is largely black and Hispanic and poor, and where the surrounding town is largely white and more prosperous, busing is as the red flag to the bull. The educational district has battled against it. While there is strong disagreement between members of the board, nevertheless, for the present majority, the standard bearer in this and other educational struggles is Dr. Edwin Klotz, once aide to the controversial former California Commissioner of Education, Max Rafferty, now superintendent of schools here. Dr. Klotz, who proudly proclaims himself both a traditionalist and a conservative, is locked in ideological combat both with the courts and with New York State's Educational Commissioner, Ewald Nyquist. We talked to him at what he deemed to be an appropriate site, the Hasbrouck House, where George Washington spent the last 2 years of the Revolution. As a group of junior high students proudly displayed the uniforms and muskets they will wear for the bicentennial ceremonies at Concord, Dr. Klotz enlarged on some of his views. What is the dispute between you and the State Department of Education?
The major issue there is, quote, busing or integration. Now, he says we should integrate our schools. We feel we have an integrated school system, particularly through the 7 through 12. We have some elementary schools that have more blacks or a large percentage of blacks than whites.
You've got one down on Montgomery Street that's about 95%.
Yeah, about 95%, because the people who live in that local school area are 95% black. And the conservative point of view would say the way to integrate the city is what exactly they are doing. They're building new apartment houses down there, all along the waterfront that you're familiar with here in Newburgh. The effort is to get the whole community integrated by building buildings down there, by middle-class housing and businesses. That would take care of integration. To integrate by forcibly busing these black kids out to a white school in the suburb area and then bringing those white kids into the city, parents just don't want it.
Dr. Klotz is a firm believer in clearly defined rules and strict obedience to them. He also is a man of ideas. At a time when some, even on the Board of Education, are calling for a plan to separate the schools of the poor and minority-dominated city from the affluent and largely white towns, Dr. Klotz looked again at California and proposed still another possibility. You proposed a possible alternative school system, which is causing quite a bit of talk at this point. And just what does that entail?
Well, we have a crowded high school, only one high school, but we're trying to find a solution to that, and one of the best solutions, of course, is 2 high schools. Now, to have another high school, but not to build another high school, using, say, declining population and using 1 junior high school as the second high school. That was the first thought. Now, secondly, what kind of a high school? And being a traditionalist, and as Mr. Nyquist said, I come from California where they're establishing traditional schools out there. Yes, they are. In Pasadena, it's working beautifully, the John Marshall School. And I would like to see an alternative school of that nature. Might see 2 alternative schools. But this one would be where parents would request their kids to go to that school. You'd have a dress code, maybe a behavioral code. You'd have a tighter curriculum, not as many electives, say required foreign languages, required occupational skill for every student who goes to that school, not just industrial arts, but learn a skill at the same time, prepare for college. They'd have both curriculums, but you'd have required courses and fewer electives and, say, tighter discipline, if you want to call it that, and it seems to be a very popular idea with a lot of parents.
You said there might be a second alternative school. What would that be?
Well, we already have something of a nature of certain kids that, say, are disruptive or want to get out into the world rather than in school, but they're not of age to get out. So we have a work-study program for these young people. We already have something like that. So in a sense, we can call that an optional learning environment. This is called STEP program here. We have identified about 100, close to 100 people in the secondary level who, say, are troublemakers in the sense that they get in trouble more often than others. And they would be a part of this effort to give them more opportunity to express themselves in skills or work rather than just curriculum in the high school.
Are they of any particular racial makeup, by and large?
About 70 black, I'd say, and 30 white, yeah. That's just off the cuff.
Well, a couple of things should be noted here. One, that the Pasadena Traditional School allows for such physical punishment as paddling. And two, that Pasadena also offers other alternatives, such as a school based upon a far more liberal approach to education than anything currently available at Newburgh. Dr. Klotz also suggested the waterfront projects as the proper way to integrate an area by creating economically integrated neighborhoods. But the actuality is that the higher building is a concentration of poor black families. Barrack houses started with seed money by a church group is supposed to be integrated, but is in fact black, with many, some say as high as 32 units empty. As for other efforts,
there have been lots of plans. This one came closer to fruition than most. Right here in this spot, there were supposed to be some 91 co-ops, pretty expensive co-ops, condominiums to be more accurate. This was going to be for people who loved the water and who wanted to be near the waterfront. Well, now all work has come to a halt. The people who are putting up the project are $840,000 in debt. They don't know where the money is going to come from. Nobody knows whether the project will be continued or whether it will just stay the way you see it forevermore. This magnificent old house was built in 1834. It's called the Crawford House, and today it houses the Newburgh Historical Society. It emphasizes one of the strengths of this community, and that is a substantial amount of very good old housing stock. There are houses all over here that would drive New York City's brownstone renovators clear out of their minds. That and the location.
the views are lordly, truly magnificent. Newburgh should be a tourist attraction, considering not only its own history, but also the fact that the entire region is rich with remembrances of our past. All this to say nothing of both winter and summer sporting facilities close by. It seems incredible that these opportunities have never been exploited. This is not to say that people aren't trying, and one of them is the earnest young city manager, James Hauser. City managers have traditionally been sacrificial ghosts in Newburgh's fierce political battles. They move through here with the speed of baseball managers on losing ball clubs. Hauser acknowledges that after only 13 months in office, he is a figure of controversy, and he speculated as to why.
Perhaps it's the methods and techniques that we have implemented. There have been a number of department heads who have been changed. We have a new comptroller. We have a new city engineer. We will have a new city assessor. We certainly have a new police commissioner. We've established a real estate office to categorize the available properties within the city of Newburgh, to identify the stages of deterioration or the statement of condition of each of our buildings. We've now got outside auditors reviewing the city's financial statements to lend credibility both to the banking community here in New York City, but also assure the public that our government is reasonably well operated.
Well, what
you can't accomplish all of these changes in 13 months without shaking somebody's concepts and ideas.
This magnificent old church has been standing here above the river these past 150 years. Sad, isn't it, that it should have been let go this way? But not completely. I saw signs of life around, a car, an open door, so I wandered in and found this. One of the things about Newburgh is that there are lots of plans, very few actualities, which is one of the problems of Newburgh. It may be one of the reasons why this place represents such a shock to so many people, because the Hudson Valley Freedom Theatre represents not one, but 5 programs which are not plans, which are actualities. This is one of them. This is a pre-dance program for children.
And we're going to do exercises that we did.
The city manager referred to a report prepared by the state's youth commission after the latest disturbances here. In addition to deploring the number of changes in city administration, it also called attention to the lack of athletic and other facilities for the youth of Newburgh. This obviously affects poor children more than those with greater resources available to them. These programs are an attempt at an answer. But when the founders of the Hudson Valley Freedom Theatre in effect squatted here and started working on the then deserted interior of the church, there were many who took alarm. The rhetoric of the group's leader, Curt Stewart, sounds too nationalistic to them, too radical when he talks on the radio about what he terms oppression. First, some community leaders wanted the Freedom Theatre out. Now the theater has some support from the State Council on the Arts. Perhaps this has brought a move to have the city take over the church itself and then make it available to a number of cultural groups.
Why do you think there is opposition to you here in this community?
Because the Freedom Theater is about speaking the truth, because we understand that only such time when we begin to get to the root of the problems, only then can we solve problems, you see. And if you look at it, there are problems which have been plaguing this community for years, and apparently somebody has been sweeping the problems under the carpet. And the fact that we do address the root of the problems, such as the riots here. The riots are rooted in the fact that there are no programs which are rooted in the heritage and culture of the black community primarily and the Latino community.
But would it be fair to say then that your feeling is that there are people who are afraid you're going to stir things up?
We're not going to create any disturbances here.
I'm talking about fearing it.
I would think that they are in fear of the fact that we're going to speak the truth and people are going to start waking, beginning to wake up. And when that happens, then they're going to have to either serve the interests of the people or expose themselves for what they really are, and then the people are going to deal with them.
Reading of the minutes from our previous meeting.
The February meeting of the Newburgh Human Rights Commission was called to order 8 p.m. February 25th by Chairman Saul Williams. President Jose Castillo.
There was a Human Rights Commission before. The previous city council got rid of it. The present council, with a 3-2 Democratic margin, revived it. Right now, it's concerned with Superintendent Klotz's alternate school suggestions. Unhappily so, I might add.
To me, it represents...
This meeting is being held in one of the rooms of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, whose minister is Reverend Saul Williams. He's no stranger to civil rights causes. Williams used to be assistant to Reverend T. Wyatt Walker, and he hails from Ocean Hill, Brownsville. Now he's the chairman of the Human Rights Commission. Of course, the fact that a commission exists is one thing. Its impact is another.
I think that Newburgh is in a state where it does not expect anything. It just waits for something to happen.
Not a great deal, but something. And there are other things. The people who buy houses and fix them up. The people who try to make plans. And not all of these have failed. This handsome, well-designed project was built partially to house poor people. It certainly isn't enough, but it is one product of urban renewal which added to the town rather than subtracting from it. Newburgh has a college, a good one, Mount St. Mary's, with a group of people, both among the faculty and the students, involved in the welfare of the city.
You're looking down Broadway in Newburgh. Imagine going to work every day and being greeted with a prospect like that. No town with assets like these can be totally discarded. This could be a wonderful place to live. Yet the problems are obvious enough, as we've traced them throughout the course of this program. They come down to lack of leadership, lack of imagination, lack of communication. I look at Newburgh and I see it somewhat like the old analogy about the glass of water. Remember? You look at the glass of water, and if you are a pessimist, you say, this glass of water is half empty. If you're an optimist, you look at it and say, this glass of water is half full. Newburgh is like that. But look around at your own area, your own neighborhood, your own community. Is it really that much different from this one? I'm Joe Michaels, speaking for New York Illustrated in Newburgh, New York.